A lot of people think that Tom Cruise dancing around in his underwear to Bob Seger in Risky Business is his most iconic scene. To others, it's him feeling the need for speed in Top Gun or infiltrating a vault in Mission Impossible. Or, I want the truth, or show me the money! But to me, one of the scenes that best sums up Tom Cruise as one of the coolest movie stars ever is his entrance in Barry Levinson's Rain Man. We see the smog-filled backdrop of Los Angeles as a Lamborghini flies across the screen. We see that it's being transported to a car lot where Tom Cruise's Charlie Babbit, one of the most iconic 80s yuppies, inspects the car while the Belle Stars cover of Iko Iko fills the soundtrack. It's a memorable moment that was so potent, composer Hans Zimmer, when he reteamed with Cruise on Mission Impossible 2, couldn't help but riff on it by using another cover of Iko Iko on the soundtrack, as Cruise's Ethan Hunt did the world's scariest rock climbing. In this episode of Tom Cruise Revisited, we take a look back at Rain Man, a movie that proved two things. In 1988, Tom Cruise was the world's biggest movie star, and he was a legit actor to boot. Tom Cruise is an iconic movie star, but all too often his acting talents are overlooked. Some of his dramatic performances, such as in Born on the 4th of July, Magnolia, The Last Samurai, and many others, put to shame a lot of the more acclaimed performances in their respective years. But his talent, too often, is taken for granted. Maybe it's that he makes it all look effortless. Back in the 80s, a lot of critics unfairly wrote him off as a pretty boy. His performance in The Color of Money had won over a few, but none super took him seriously until he paired up with Dustin Hoffman for Barry Levinson's Rain Man. In it, Cruise would play a selfish LA yuppie who discovers that he has a long-lost brother, Raymond, who's been left their late father's sizable estate. It turns out Raymond is autistic and has been confined to an institution for most of his life. Charlie takes custody of him as a way to get access to his father's money.
Raymond, am I using you, Raymond? Yeah. Shut up!
But it won't be easy to bring him home to LA, as Raymond refuses to fly. Well, except for Qantas, that is.
Qantas.
Qantas?
Qantas never crashed.
The two brothers embark on a classic road trip, and along the way, Charlie realizes that his brother is a mathematical savant, meaning a quick stopover in Vegas is in the cards so that his brother could win big at poker and cover all of Charlie's debts. Of course, Charlie starts to grow up as the film goes on, learning to value not only his brother, but also his relationship with his girlfriend Susanna, played by Valeria Golino. These days, when people discuss Rain Man, they tend to focus mostly on Dustin Hoffman's performance. Indeed, he has the showier role, with him winning an Oscar for the part. Cruise wasn't even nominated. Revisiting the movie now, it's clear that Cruise grounds the film and is the protagonist, while Hoffman is actually supporting him, and not the other way around. I think critics got lost in the flash of Cruise's performance, with him impeccably tailored throughout, sporting those classic Ray-Bans, and a great 80s haircut. But Cruise brings a lot of vulnerability to the role, with him a charismatic hustler who's not quite the cold-blooded, calculating shark he needs to be. It's a terrific part, and indeed, the story of how Rain Man came to be is pretty interesting. Originally, Steven Spielberg was set to direct, but he needed to start work on Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Sidney Pollack, who had made Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman, was also considered, but in the end the job went to Barry Levinson. The Baltimore-born director was coming off of a massive hit, with him having directed Good Morning Vietnam the year before, which, of course, kinda made Robin Williams a massive star. The screenplay was written by Ron Bass and Barry Morrow, both of whom won an Oscar for it. Morrow was inspired by two real-life savants, Kim Peek and Bill Sachter. When the movie eventually got into trouble was with the idea that Raymond was not only a savant but also autistic. This harmed the public's perception of autism, with it really a totally separate condition from savant syndrome, and the odds of having both autism and being a savant are very, very tiny. The movie made it seem like it was commonplace. Nevertheless, Hoffman spent a year preparing for his role, and apparently was plagued with self-doubt throughout the filming, begging Barry Levinson to replace him with Bill Murray. Cruise and Hoffman apparently would rehearse and trade off roles in between filming, and indeed the two became close on set. One thing that's noteworthy is that Rain Man is one of the first American films to be scored by Hans Zimmer, whose unusual, partly electronic score earned him his first Oscar nomination. It was one of the first scores he composed without his regular collaborator Stanley Myers, and it really did kickstart his career with him scoring Black Rain the next year, and quickly he became not only one of the hottest composers in town, but eventually a mogul. Rain Man was a smash hit at the box office, earning a massive $172 million domestically. This was good enough to make it the top grossing movie of the year. Interestingly, it actually opened in second place at the box office behind a movie that it shared several similarities with, Twins. In the end, Rain Man would clean up at the Oscars, with Hoffman winning Best Actor, Levinson winning Best Director, and the film also taking home Best Picture and Best Screenplay. In the autism community, the movie has a mixed legacy. On the one hand, the film led to a common stereotype, being that people on the autism spectrum had savant-like abilities, but on the other hand, the movie also greatly increased awareness of the disorder. Notably, the movie also led to people believing that card counting is somehow illegal in Las Vegas. It's not, so if you're able to count cards, go ahead. While Cruise's performance would go to be somewhat unheralded, it did find one very prominent fan, with actor Michael Caine once citing it as his favorite screen performance of all time. It turns out the reason for this was intensely personal to Caine, with him discovering late in life that he too had a long-lost brother who had spent most of his life institutionalized. Indeed, Caine maintains that while Hoffman had the showy part, Cruise is the one that really required the most discipline, and indeed, it does remain one of the actor's best performances. But watching Dustin Hoffman win the Oscar might have stung a little for Tom Cruise, who in his next film would indeed get the showy part, and would prove once and for all that when he wants to, he can be as good of a dramatic actor as anyone.